This is Jennifer, and thank you all for coming out. Thank you to Megan, and thank you to Creative Mornings for inviting us and having us here. And Youth Fables was really amazing. Thank you to them too.
And of course, Lean and Chemo at Public Us. We love Public Us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when we started talking about this talk, that's the thing that has to happen when you give a talk, right? We have to talk about it.
Talk about the talk.
Brian had some very important insights to offer. This was his insight.
I like cats and dogs.
It's true. And so it seems like it might be a non sequitur, but it isn't. No, we tie it all back in. Go ahead, next one. So these are our pets, which are comprised of obviously one dog and two cats. This is Heldy, and this is Tigger, and this is Ben. So Brian's going to tell you a little bit of the story of how we adopted and or bought them. I know you're not supposed to buy animals anymore, but it was a long time ago. People weren't rescuing things.
Yes.
Okay, go.
So the kitties, we were, I think Jen just turned 18, and this was our first apartment. We had just moved out together, and we decided we wanted a kitten, a female kitten. So we went to the Dewey no-kill shelter to pick up a kitten, and we wound up sort of falling in love with these two male adult cats. One was 3 and one was 4, and everybody told us, don't do that. What do you do? Don't get a male cat, don't get an adult cat. And
don't get two, don't get brothers, don't get them with already having names and bad attitudes.
Jen's much better at this story than I am.
Well, it's good though. Keep going. We like it.
Yeah.
So then about 2 years later, we adopted a dog. We didn't really adopt her. She was at a pet store right next to a Capriati's that we used to go to all the time. And she was so pretty, and we thought like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful gray Labrador. There's no such thing. That's a Weimaraner. So they just kind of roped us in on that one. But she was 4 months old and had been raised in essentially a pet store. So she was just totally out of control and like no sense of decorum or anything, but beautiful, really, really sweet. And we loved her intensely. We loved the cats, and we loved the dog. The cats didn't love the dog. We lived in an inharmonious home for quite some time, and then once they got old enough, they kind of got used to each other. And so we had some peace after a while. But they're all dead now, because that's what happens when you've been together 21 years and married 17 years. All your pets die. Nobody tells you that. That's like part of the arc of life. But one of the things that's important about this, I think, is that if Ben, this little sweetie right here, had not been curious about me at the Dewey Animal Shelter and not come directly over to me and like bitten me and like acted like a maniac, we probably would have never adopted him and his brother. And if Heldy hadn't done the same thing at the pet store, like been so engaged with like 2 more strangers that walked in the door to greet her, we might have never had her as well. And to be totally honest, this is our family. I mean, these were the most valuable and important relationships to us for a very long time. And I think in that way, we're kind of leading back to curiosity, not just through like animalistic curiosity, but also this idea that you can engage in relationships that are non-traditional. You can think about things in ways that people tell you not to. You can be curious about adopting adult animals. And in that way, you can kind of bring in opportunities that may never have been available to you in the past. Like talking about your dead pets at a lecture and learning about people's relationships, right? What do Brian and I like? We like unpredictable and difficult relationships. Challenging things for sure.
Yes. So that was fun.
That was fun.
So
Dead pets, yay.
First things first, now we're going to talk about First Friday and how we kind of got started and got interested in and became really active in First Friday. Mm-hmm. And this was an artwork that Jen and I collaborated on. The background is a bunch of me's that were kind of decoupaged, is that the word?
I guess so.
Decoupaged on the background, and then obviously in the primary space is a big U. And we did the inversion of this too, where it's a bunch of U's in the background and a big me in the
They were really enormous and obnoxious too. Like they were like the size of this white area, just to put it into context.
Yeah, they were pretty big.
Yeah.
And we got started in First Friday as we were out one night and, where's my notes? And we went to a place called the V Bar. It was in the Venetian. And ran into a friend there that was also, had also graduated from the Las Vegas Academy, which I graduated from the first, it was 95 was the first year for visual arts there. And she also, I think she was in part of the visual arts program or part of the music program, I can't remember. But this was back in 2003, and she said, hey, you should really check out this thing First Friday. It's a really interesting art event that's happening. And so long story short, I think it was like the next day. I think we were out on a Thursday maybe, and the next day was Friday. Mm-hmm. And so we went to the First Friday, thought it was really an amazing thing, something we were really excited about. And again, it was something we were interested in and curious about. And the following First Friday, we looked into what it would take to rent a space in the Arts Factory, and we rented a space and we did a bunch of paintings and set up a show, and we're ready to go for the very next First Friday.
So what was interesting about it, I think, in part, is that over the course of First Friday, so there's like a bunch of people here who've known us since those First Friday days, which were many moons ago. But we opened this space and we painted it all black. This is a picture of us from our third month in the space. We called it capital H, which was nice and confusing for people because they would be like, is it just like an uppercase H or is it like all spelled out? And so there's nothing like confusing people to like really bring them into the activity of curiosity. Yeah, you have to be real curious.
Yeah, what is this?
To figure out who we are or what the heck's going on. But we painted the walls all black and we did a bunch of disparate artworks. But on our third month there, a really wonderful photographer, Bill Hughes, came and took our picture for the RJ. And so there was this huge picture of us in the Sunday newspaper the next month talking about First Friday for a gigantic article in which we were not quoted at all. So it was really confusing. You had to be really curious about what was going on to like get connected. But it was a fun way to kind of have an opportunity to share our different works and to work together and to get involved in First Friday. And so we did 36 different collections. We did totally different artworks every First Friday. So it was quite a grueling task that we set forth and something that we set the agenda for on our own. Sometimes we wondered why we did that.
Yeah,
and other times
brutal sometimes.
It was, and sometimes it was like glorious. So you never know. You have to like kind of drag yourself through it. We made lots of neat jokes. People who know us know that we work in the sign industry. We made lots of lighting and sign jokes. We like to make jokes. I don't know if you guys have noticed. And so this was like a really fun and exciting time in our lives. But most importantly, it connected us with First Friday. And so one of the things that happened was Brian and I were both on the board for First Friday for 5 years. I was the curator of the outdoor exhibition spaces, which was tents outside that allowed artists to show and sell their work for free. I was the editor of the First Friday newsletter, and Brian was the designer, so we had a lot of opportunities. And then it strangely led to another kind of thing that I had been curious about but hadn't reached out for ever, which was the very first person that we sold one of Brian's beautiful artworks to was the brand new arts and entertainment editor of the Las Vegas Weekly. We got to be friends, and I'm real snarky in writing, as I am in person. And those were the MySpace days when you share your thoughts and feelings with everyone.
All your thoughts on MySpace.
So many thoughts on MySpace. And so we would share our thoughts, and this editor reached out to me and asked me if I would write a consumer column for the Las Vegas Weekly, which I did every week. And it led to a 5-year career in journalism. And there's one person who's my editor sitting right here in the front row, who occasionally I still do it. So it's been a good 12 years that I've been writing commercially. And in part, it came from participating in First Friday.
Yeah, being curious and interested in this event that was happening, and curious about how we would participate in the event. And
yeah. So I guess it's a non-linear talk, I'm sure you guys have noticed. So one of the things that Brian and I were really going to talk about is that arc, that path of like how being curious takes you on a lot of tangents and detours, and it sends you on kind of different paths all the time. So we've done a ton of work outside of Las Vegas. We've both been working professionals for 20 years. So we've done a lot that doesn't pertain to Las Vegas, but we wanted to talk about Las Vegas in part because Brian was born and raised here. I've been here since I was 8 years old. And I think sometimes there's a lot of creative professionals in this room, and I know a lot of you have probably heard dialogue, especially if you have been here a long time, that there's no possibility of achieving your creative goals here in Las Vegas. And I think that Brian and I both agree that that's not the case.
Yeah. When I was young, I was convinced I was going to have to leave Vegas to pursue a creative career. It was just either LA or New York or but I think Vegas has a lot of very unique opportunities that aren't available anywhere else also, if you find them. Mm-hmm. My career early on, I got started doing like collectible tokens, like pen and ink drawings that would eventually get minted into little collectible tokens, and then started doing belly glass that for slot machine artwork, and then got into signage, and then from signs transitioned into motion graphics, and so there's definitely a lot of interesting things out there. It's just, and kind of special to Vegas.
Yeah, and I think too that this idea that curiosity is something that has to be far away from you. For something to be interesting or engaging, for you to be curious about something, you have to reach out a far way to get it, right? But really the truth is so many of the really exciting opportunities that have come to us or that we've sought out were things that were right next to us. They were things that we thought we knew about, but when we informed ourselves more, they really developed into something important and meaningful in our lives. And I think that that's a great lesson that we've learned, and if ever we can like impart it to other people, we always try to, if you can just reach your arm out, there's something there,
In this particular slide, this was a collaboration. The duck kind of swimming around in the pool water was really Jen's idea, and this was an expansion of like some programming that the SLS had where it used the kind of 3D mapping or trompe l'oeil type effect. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind this is, from this specific angle, it looks like a three-dimensional object that's kind of floating in space, mm-hmm. and I think it was. Oops, I'm jumping ahead. I think it was very convincing and worked really well.
It might not seem obvious here, but what's happening is there's like a box LED on the ceiling. So it has all four sides on the outside and then one flat surface. And so when Brian created this animation, it looked like a swimming pool with this ducky that dips in and dips out. But it's so dark in the room that it appears to be legitimately 3D. So now this illuminated thing is 3D and moving in like an illogical space, which is super exciting and gets people to bust out their phones, which is why this was one of the very first like viral things that Brian ever did, which is an interesting opportunity.
And it's really a modern version of a classic painting effect to mm-hmm. simulate depth, and it's really simple and also very interesting, I think.
So like years before this, Brian designed something that was very interesting.
Yes. So this is Harmon Corner. This is a big sign on Las Vegas Boulevard. But when I was going through the design process, and one of the things that really excited me about the project was the idea that what would a building look like if it could transform itself, or if it could transform its shape based on the time of day or based on the use of the building. So at that time, they had envisioned this space as a retail space or a restaurant, or kind of a little bit of a catch-all. So the idea was maybe in the morning it looks like a coffee shop. In the middle of the day, it looks like a retail space that you could shop for clothes, or I'm sorry, retail, basically.
We'll talk about this part.
Okay, and it's a similar effect. The idea was, we've all seen projection mapping that's been done on classic buildings, but this building really didn't have any existing architecture to work with. So my idea was, what would it look like if Frank Gehry could, have something that could transform itself, or what would it look like if, the architecture is no longer a static thing, no longer a fixed thing, but we can imagine anything there.
So then, in complete and utter stark contrast, to this really amazing project that does exist on Harmon Corner, and one of the busiest corners in the country. And they still play some of this beautiful creative content. Mostly it's beer ads, but that's life.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that I kind of apply like my skill set in a commercial environment is to do things like this. So Park Theater asked me to create some gowns for the grand opening. And they gave me a like hyper specific color, teal. But we could have like a whole 20-minute long conversation about what is teal, like what color is teal, who decides. Like it's a very heated debate currently. But I'll tell you, it's no one color. It's an amalgamation of colors. But it was a really expressive challenge. And one of the most interesting parts of it was this idea, like Brian, where he doesn't accept what a sign should be. He's always creating something new, and I think that takes a lot of curiosity. It takes a lot of daring to like strike out into a new space and try something that other people haven't. You know, he developed a player for that sign that broke like world records so that it could push this beautiful big image out to this huge sign. And I didn't break any records with this, but I think
you broke records.
that we somehow cornered the market on what it means to be teal. That sort of thing. Tealness, very important. Okay, next thing. Oh, this is fun. So this is a good example of how Brian and I, even though we've been together these, whatever it is, 21 years or something like that, it's a long time, we still get a lot of inspiration from each other, and in part because we look at what the other person does sort of with new eyes all the time. And it is kind of like an inner curiosity, right? How can you wake up next to somebody every morning and still be like, what are you doing? How interesting. But one of the things that we've done for several years is done packages for the Las Vegas Weekly. I don't write for them anymore, and I haven't for quite some time, but we instead have like another kind of creative relationship, which is a good part of kind of the whole curiosity arc, right? How do you go from being a writer to like designing potato costumes for the cover of a weekly magazine? I don't know, but it does involve a lot of curiosity, I can tell you that. But one of the interesting things that we've done is taken their themes and reinterpreted them amongst each other. So this is a good example. I made a fancy dress that looked like a bunch of ripped candy wrappers and golden tickets, and Brian made these beautiful motion graphics.
So this was my 2016 365 project, and this was very much an exploration of curiosity. It was kind of like, it was an opportunity really for me to think about, to kind of expand upon skills that I had and kind of build on learn things, you know, like mess with features of software that I was very familiar with but never really touched because there's not a lot of commercial call to do, you know, a fur chair or something like that. But you know, I was interested in, you know, creating something with fur and learning how those tools work. Same thing with soft bodies or, you know, any of the other kind of animations that you saw. You can see in this little amalgamation of things. But it all started really with that goal in mind of just, you know, every day I'm going to learn something. Every day I'm going to try to just do something new or expand upon something I already am familiar with. And it was really an amazing thing because it started out like, you know, what is this Instagram thing? How am I going, you know, started out as like just vacation pictures basically, and, you know, pictures of random things that I see around town to kind of like a more curated and cultivated project.
Oh no, what's this? Well, and just to put it in the context for anybody in the room who doesn't know, Brian did 365 individual projects that he posted one a day, and it led to like all kinds of interesting things. A bunch of these were featured in a DJ Vice music video. They did a SpaceX event with one of them. Vente Privé in Paris is a big building. They put an LED, and then they put a big curation of these on there. He did the Melbourne International Jazz Festival with these. You can see them at Alto Bar at Caesar's Palace, if you're ever going there. As a personal kind of side project, wound up having a bunch of commercial use. Yeah, but more importantly, I think that they were a good exercise in sharing what you're working on, sharing your daily curiosities with other people, and then it really catalyzed a lot of things. So he had like 150 Instagram followers. Oh, go to RuPaul, it's fine. He had 150 Instagram followers when that started, and he has about 14,000 now, so it's always fun. Well, I think we're gonna kind of like skip ahead of this, but I'll tell you really quickly about this one. So Derek Barry is a wonderful person and an engaging individual, and also a Britney Spears impersonator. And he's really wonderful, but he was on RuPaul's Drag Race, and even though I was telling everybody, I'm not doing costuming, don't ask me for costumes, he asked me for a costume for an undisclosed purpose at an undisclosed location in which I was unsure of everything about it except that he would like it to be sparkly. And so we did this, and it ended up on RuPaul's Drag Race. So it was really fun and exciting, and gave me kind of a new insight into letting go of control, being more curious about what other people are working on, and engaging openly with like whatever I'd like to. Performance, if this is a kind of performance. Costuming, if costuming is important at that time. Whatever we'd like. So the next thing, now we're on a breakneck pace.
Yeah, sorry.
Fine art. I like just saying this, like fine art. Let's make it. This is a piece from a show that we did during our many shows, First Friday, and it was called Brian versus Jen, a collage to the death. And the victor shall remain undeclared. And lo, these many years later, no one has been declared the victor.
Jen won.
Did I win?
I declare you the winner.
Yay. So this was the only collaborative piece from the show. It was real tiny. We're making big ones for the last 10 years that we have not finished. But they say they were hell-bent on global domination but could not agree on how, what, or where to attack. And I would argue that that is still the case. But this is an introduction, a little bit, tiniest little bit of like fine artworks that Brian and I do separately. And they are definitely an exploration in curiosities.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and this is a little excerpt from one of my Machina Ex Machina pieces, and the idea behind it was very much like they all started as a color study. I was reading an Albers book, and I was very interested in. I draw and I paint, and I find myself using the same cues over and over again because I'm comfortable with them, I'm familiar with them, and. So I figured the best way to create a random set of colors is just to write a program to do that. So I was curious about what that outcome would be, and then I did that. It wound up, did 3 boxes, each of a unique color, and I thought, well, this is actually really remarkable. I like a lot of these and hate a few of these. What would happen if I put them in motion? And so long story short, that's kind of how that whole project started. And then this is kind of the first variation of the first one that I ever did, and I kind of keep going back to that because I'm continually kind of amazed and delighted with what the program comes up with. So often it does things I wouldn't expect, and I'm always curious to see what it'll come up with.
If you want to feel real fancy, you can tell your friends you saw some parametric light art.
Yes.
That's what this is.
All right.
Super fancy. Okay, so speaking of curiosity, one of the things that I recently did, who knows why, I joined the MFA program at UNLV. I'm the ripe old age of 37, so it's a little interesting to be going back to school after 15, 17 years away. But it's been a really interesting experience, and one of the things that I did recently that was not really attached to school, but was somehow like, everything's integrated, as curiosity tends to do. It tends to connect all the things that you're doing because each thing informs the other. This is a piece that I did. This is not me, I'm sure you've noticed. This is Lady Pino. She did a work with me inside of the windows at City Hall. So they have these huge encasement windows. And we devised a performance to fill the windows with clear cellophane, which is one of the materials that I've often used in my work. And this is kind of a whole new engagement with that idea and sort of the opportunity to share with people how very laborious and sometimes terrifying curiosity can be. People were very worried about her like smothering to death in there and all kinds of things, which she did not. She survived. But it's a beautiful abstract skyscape that looks very peaceful when it's all over, right? But the arduous activity of making it was something that was really interesting to share with people, and an opportunity for me to explore new and different things and think about what I'm doing in a new and different way. So the last thing, if you want to skip forward, you want to go?
Oh yeah.
Come on,
I know
Johnny on the
how to
spot.
do this.
What's going
I've done
on?
this before. I know how to
Have
operate
you?
this.
So, okay, a long time ago, Brian and I went to the movie theater, as we often do even today. It's our favorite thing. And we saw I Heart Huckabees, and everyone hated it except for us. It was great. And one of the most important things that happened in there was the main character, Albert Markovsky. He's this young man who's an artist and a poet. And he's trying to save the world and nature. And he goes to an existentialist detective, which is really Dustin Hoffman, but it's okay. His name is Bernard. And he tells him this wonderful, encouraging sensibility about life, which is everything you want and need, you already have and are, which is like this very kind of like Zen statement, right? You are everything that you need. You are everything that you want, right? But the thing about it is, with curiosity, that's the truth, right? I mean, if you reach out beyond yourself, only as far as your fingertips can touch, right? You'll find something. You'll engage with something meaningful and important. And all you had at that point was yourself and your own interests. And I think that that's how we've gotten just as far as we have. I don't know where we're going after this, but that's where curiosity comes in. You think so?
Yeah.
Give us some like important parting statement. Tell us something really deep and meaningful.
I basically
You've shared all.
wrung dry.
That happens sometimes with curiosity too. You have to take a break every once in a while. So, well, thanks for listening to us.